It's been asked that even though those 3 and 4 should be fairly short, I know that we have a discussion item here about Wind Zero, and Jane has a 305 class, and although I said it wouldn't take more than 15 minutes, or hopefully it wouldn't take any more than 15 minutes, move ahead to the discussion item, and then we'll come back to the other 2 items to meet on.
I'm sorry, but I have to go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jane, would you like to introduce this topic?
Yeah,
Do I need to say anything about Wind Zero, or do you want to go ahead?
I'll go ahead, thanks. Yeah, I'm Jane Higginson. I'm Instructor of Environmental Science here, and there are about 7 of us. Well, one had to leave, but 7 of us here with the purpose of informing the Academic Senate about what Wind Zero is, and asking for your support in recommending that IVC withdraw its support for this project. And I have a few packets of information here. I unfortunately don't have one for everybody, but sorry. There's a few key documents that you can see to understand what this is about. And the first thing I want to say is that I've talked to a number of people on campus saying, do you know what this is? And a lot of people assume it's a wind energy project. It isn't. Okay, Wind Zero is a special forces training organization primarily, but provide training for law enforcement and firefighters and so on. They're proposing a almost 1,000-acre facility to be built in Ocotillo, which is the west side of Imperial Valley. And there's a community member here from Ocotillo, Edie Harmon. You can see on your packet, if you got one, if you go to the Wind Zero website, they're showing a list of community supporters. Imperial Valley College is at the very top of the list. And the project is going to withdraw thousands of gallons of groundwater, they're saying, per day in an area that doesn't have very good groundwater quality to begin with. It's going to, of course, create air pollution. They have an off-road vehicle racing track in association with it, which will create more dust and lots of noise from the potentially dozens or up to hundreds of firearms that can be going off. They've said that they were going to protect the environment of Ocotillo by using blended metal ammunition instead of lead ammunition. And blended metal ammunition is illegal for use by the U.S. military. And so I just want you to try to understand that this is not a benign organization. And okay, so they're offering their facility for our AJ and firefighter students, and that's really, you know, that's I think the motivation for IVC as being a supporter. But we have to look at our SLOs say global awareness is one of our learning objectives. And I think we need to set an example. This is not in keeping with global awareness if IVC supports this project. Okay, so in the packet it shows an early Wind Zero flyer where they say they're a defense services company. The more recent website doesn't say that anymore. They're also associated with Blackwater, and there's a photo here, which I believe you took this photo, did you? Okay, so we have some community members here who have been following this whole Blackwater Wind Zero activities in this region. And one of the packet items is a photo of the Vice President of Blackwater, Bonfiglio, I don't know his first name, and in the parking lot at Ocotillo during one of the community meetings, I think, discussing this project with Wind Zero. So Wind Zero does have ties with Blackwater. There's no question about that. And okay, there's a document in the packet about EPA. EPA is asking for more analysis of the groundwater because of the potential negative impacts of the project. So The bottom line is that we don't feel that this project should be supported by a community college. Even though we need training facilities for our firefighter and HA students, it's not setting a good foundation for that because it's not going to benefit because of the hazards, both environmental and types of ammunition being used, and also just the whole social factor of having a special forces training organization have a giant facility in Imperial Valley. And so that's what I wanted to let you know is going on, in case you didn't know about it. And we hope that the Academic Senate will agree to help us withdraw IBC's name from the WinZero website and withdraw our support of this project. Do you have anything you want to add?
And some more comments, and this is just a discussion item. We cannot, of course, vote on it or make a recommendation at this time. We certainly could bring this item back if we wanted to, if there was interest in doing so.
And
Additional comment?
I would be happy to come back at another time. My name is Edie Harmon. I have lived in Imperial County for almost 32 years, almost all of that time in Ocotillo. I basically ended up staying in the county because I was deeply involved in groundwater issues at the beginning. The county's been involved in litigation to try to protect the Ocotillo-Coyote Wells groundwater basin since 1972. Litigation that was initiated by more than 8 lawsuits that the county was involved in both state and federal court. It made it to the California Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court. The appellate court in San Diego is very much aware of the county's efforts to protect the groundwater basin, which is one reason why the county is still in court on its approvals related to the U.S. gypsum expansion project, because it was going to allow U.S. gypsum to double the amount of export from the groundwater basin in the environmental review. And the appellate court said, thanks, but I don't think so, because we remember all your other litigation efforts to protect the basin. And in cooperative agreement with USGS, and the U.S. Geological Survey in San Diego has been monitoring both groundwater level and water quality in that basin since 1972. And the information they've gotten and a letter that they submitted at the request of Congressman Filner on the U.S. gypsum project points out the really serious adverse impacts of that withdrawal of groundwater in terms of water level and water quality and what it means for the community. US EPA in 1996, using the information from USGS, designated the Ocotillo-Coyote groundwater basin as a sole source aquifer, one of I think 4 in the state of California, which means if the water quality is degraded or the water levels are depleted, the existing community, all of which are primarily on private wells, have no other economically or physically feasible alternative source of water. And EPA has submitted a letter to the county on this project because they are very concerned. The project is in probably the most vulnerable, most sensitive portion of the groundwater basin. I was looking at the data, and I hope I don't end up crying, but I've analyzed all the USGS data for more than 30 years. There's a well on the site. The total dissolved solids in that well is 6,900 parts per million. That is almost 10 times as saline as the water that comes from the Colorado River. If WinZero and puts in 2 wells that pump 1,500 gallons a minute of water, they will succeed in contaminating the nearby adjacent wells. The water level at that site is about 30 feet below, because septic leachate in alluvial fill goes down 60 feet. They're proposing a septic system with 40,000 gallons a day. There is no way that if that project approved with that kind of usage to the groundwater basin, that it will not contaminate it, both in terms of increased salinity, pumping saline water from depth, which is something that USGS has expressed concern about with US gypsum's pumping, but it will also biologically contaminate the basin. And at some point in the late 70s, we were concerned about a project near Coyote Wells where a developer wanted to put in 100 mobile homes on a single well and a single septic tank, and the water that there was somewhat over 30 feet below the surface. And I talked to the developer in the hall. He thanked me went in, withdrew the project, and told me I may have saved him from the biggest financial mistake of his life, because he realized he would be having a nice little cycle pumping sewage. And I informed the board that if you approve this project, you are going to be liable for the public health consequences of approving a project that's going to provide biologically contaminated water to the residents. So this project is right up against, the boundary is Molitor on that line right now. It's a residential subdivision. Everybody has their own private well. There are families with children, family with elderly. Wind Zero is proposing having up to, if you look at the documentation, and it took me 4 days of going through, county provided me 3 CDs. I don't know anyone else that got all the CDs, but I looked at all the information and made a list of the project, which is larger than the longest distance on the property. The property is located between Interstate 8 and the old railroad on the north, residential subdivision on the west, Highway 98 on the south, and BLM's area of critical environmental concern on the east. It's up against an earthquake fault, which is part of the problem with the groundwater basin. But it is truly the most vulnerable portion of the basin. I've talked with groundwater geologists from both US EPA and USGS, and I've talked with the head of the Regional Water Quality Control Board in Palm Desert, and they have all expressed concerns to me. I mean, I cannot think in the more than 30 years I've lived in Imperial County that I have ever seen any proposed project with such serious adverse impacts to any existing community. And I would ask that the Faculty Senate and IVC consider the kinds of projects that you would want in your neighborhood for your children, for your grandchildren, for your parents. And if this is not something that you would want in your neighborhood, I would ask that you recommend that the college withdraw its support. And I know in San Diego, I was at the public meeting of the board for Southwestern College, where Congressman Filner and others spoke out against the, asking the college to reconsider its relationship and its contract with Blackwater for an offer to allow their students to use the shooting sites there. And Congressman Filner basically, in part of his comments, asked the board, don't sell your souls. For a couple $100 for reduced costs for providing training for students, is it worth the image of the publicly supported educational institution to be tied in with a project that has such serious and environmental and environmental justice issues? So, I mean, I have submitted comments. I've got everything printed out. I'd be happy to provide you any additional materials, but I have the feeling that also, those of you that know Ocotillo, do you think there's going to be a luxury resort with 100 rooms there, or a luxury townhouse with a gated community of 28 people, 28 units over non-potable water? I mean, I think that the college did not understand any more than the community did what the real proposal was, and if you had understood, I think there would have been questions rather than unquestionable endorsement and support.
Thank you very much.
I just have
One comment.
one comment. I was at an event over in the museum, and Wind Zero presented IBC's foundation with a substantial check.
$10,000.
How much?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, just in my position as division chair over the AJ Post program, I know that Wind Zero has approached our post program, but to my knowledge, at this point, we have no relationship with them. I don't recall any official endorsement coming from the board. Do we have any contracts?
It's on the website. If you go on the
No,
internet.
but we see
that's-
that. I'm just saying, I don't ever recall anything. But I think I don't, I'll look. No, I believe you. I'm saying, they could have put it there.
Without our consent.
Without our consent.
Yeah.
Just that,
I just don't know.
Okay, let me just set this so I can see myself. My name's Ray Lutz. I'm from San Diego area. I've worked for probably about 2 years on the Blackwater issue. I run the Stop Blackwater website. I filmed the Ocotillo meeting. If you'd like to see that, get a card here. You can go to the website and see the whole thing. I had, although they claim the picture means that Blackwater's tied in, I don't think it proves that. However, weird things happened to me in the course of this. First, a guy approached me at a coffee shop meeting, and before I saw anything, he said, "Here's our business plan, take a look." And in the business plan, it said they're going to try to, one of their exit strategies was to sell this to Blackwater, which makes sense. Even if they say we're not going to do it, there's never a guarantee with the company because they'll do whatever their best interest is. Secondly, when I made that video, I got an anonymous transcript from Washington, D.C. With everything outlined in the whole thing, describing about how they're tied in with this thing. And that's on the website too, so take a look. And I did delete the part that was confidential because I thought it might have been like a trap for me to say something out of line and then they could nail me. Thirdly, I had an independent investor approach me, a phone call. And again, I can't vet any of these things. I don't know if they're real. But she said they were going to invest $50,000 in it, and they told her that they were planning to work deals with Blackwater. She pulled her money out. We just, the thing that Edie mentioned about Southwestern College, what's going on now in this whole industry, this sort of private military industry, is that they're trying to purify the name, and they're doing that by partnering with colleges. And Southwestern College entered into a memorandum of understanding, I think sort of as a quick mistake. I don't know what I don't think they realized what they were getting into. And it said no cost agreement. Of course, then it compensated Blackwater, provided Blackwater with access to the conference rooms on campus, unlimited time and for whatever they wanted, and had a gag order on the board so they couldn't say anything. So it was really, and about 10 other issues. So they agreed to renegotiate, and that's where it stands right now. And as Edie said, Bob Filner did come out, and he's been very supportive of this all the way through. There's 4 lawsuits that are going to be coming forward in San Diego from the victims of Blackwater shootings in Iraq. They're going to be heard in San Diego. Really not a smart move to partner with any of these firms right now. What might happen is, it might be true that Wind Zero has nothing to do with Blackwater. Let's say that's the case. And they put their thing in and it looks fine, and about 2 years or 5 years down the road, when the smoke clears from Blackwater and everything, and last administration, stuff like that, then you can say, well, there's an opportunity for us to support them. But before you go into knowing exactly what the project is, knowing the background of these people with all these other weirdness about the thing, and I've never said that they're tied with Blackwater, but I've asked them the question directly, and they say no every time. So just so you know that. But so does everyone else say no, they're not working with Blackwater. So and they're called Z now anyway. Well, so I would like to suggest that you take my card and look at the video of that meeting so you kind of know what it is. It's very much like the Blackwater proposal in Potrero, which was voted down by the community by up to around 70%. So the community is, by and large, against it up there. And what I understand, the community in Ocotillo is also, there's no vote, an official vote, like there was in Potrero. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And Kathy, I believe you had a comment, did you?
I would just suggest that if you want to know the college's involvement, that you ask Dr. Gould to come and talk to you, because I'm not at all aware that we have an official relationship. This is a county matter. I would think that it's up to the Imperial County, whether it's not up to IUC, whether Wind Zero gets to put their facility here. It's up to the Imperial County, correct, Mr. Lanning?
Can I have?
I'm not with the county planning, of course, but I was going to ask if you wanted to bring Dr. Gould in at the next meeting. He did come and speak at College Council, and I'm sure he would be more than happy to come to our next meeting here as well.
Why are you filming here today?
This goes on our website on a permanent basis. This is a service to the community, so all the people who couldn't make it to the meeting can understand what you've done. And it's allowed by the Brown Act. We can film and take pictures of any of these meetings.
This is an open meeting, there's no public. Yes.
Can I just add, my husband was the faculty member at San Diego. He was a retired naval officer, and he was a faculty member at San Diego State University. He started the Criminal Justice Administration program down at the Calexico campus with the hopes of professionalizing and humanizing law enforcement. And I think my husband's horrified to think that any educational institution would support a project like this. And everything I know about the project is wrong, and I feel really bad for the people in the community that live next to it, because I have no doubt that if this project were approved, all of the people would have to leave. The only question is how soon. And I would hate, Janie and I were both in the Peace Corps. We lived in countries that ended up being torn by civil war. We saw what happened as people gradually accepted violence and gradually accepted guns. It's not nice to have to fall asleep to gunfire, to worry about what you can and can't see and know what's going on. I really don't want to think that there's blended metal ammunition that would be used in any community in this county, or to think that if it were used, that it could be contained on a private site and not get out into the community. And when I talk to people in law enforcement and Border Patrol agents that I know on a personal basis, they have all expressed grave concerns to me about this kind of activity. So I just wanted to let you know. And yes, I live in Ocotillo. I live 2.5 miles away, and I know that I too would be forced to leave and abandon the property if this project is approved. Probably not as fast as the people that only live a couple hundred yards away, but inevitably, I know we're all.
Thank you very much, and I don't know your name, but
Elena Quintana. I brought a copy of a letter I'd like to share with the senators, and it's a letter written by a Native American from Imperial County, Preston Arrowee, who wrote the letter to the California Heritage Commission and wrote the letter to the supervisors, and he is expressing his concern for the protection of cultural resources, archaeological resources in the county. And we already know from Win Zero themselves that right over or under their plans are at least 100 sites that they plan to just sweep up and put in a museum somewhere. And they've been there for thousands of years. These people want to load them up and put them in a museum. Also, Win Zero would be surrounded by geoglyphs and thousands more cultural resources that have been there in the desert for thousands of years. In one generation, in 100 years, this valley has been changed tremendously in view of the fact that these people lived for thousands of years here, and this is their history. This is their library. This is their museum out there. This is where they take their grandchildren, and this is where they come and see where they came from. And people like Win Zero don't even care about them. So that's what the letter's about. The other one, Preston couldn't be here because he's in the hospital. My views, I also disagree with this project because same reason City said about just the value system. We don't really need, I believe that the law enforcement agencies here don't need more target practice. They really need more skills in how to investigate crimes and how to solve crimes rather than just how to shoot people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Senator,
I was just gonna say that what you were saying would be nice to have Dr. Gould come, because this page says it's a formal endorsement by Imperial Valley College.
Yeah.
And if that's not the
Might
case,
not be
then
the case.
we should be, Dr. Gould would get
He
in touch
needs
with
to
them
be.
and have it removed. If it is the case, then someone had made the endorsement, it'd be nice to know who. Vice President Perry said
at
she
this
doesn't
point, I'm
have.
going to move on because we do have a couple of other items, but I'm going